I'm Anton, and I'm a climatologist, and chances are you might be too. Climatologists sit at the intersection of business and nature. They want to play a key role in minimising the human-led impact on the environment, but they also understand the realities of living and working in a modern, capitalist world. In this series, I'll be proving that climatologists are already out there leading the charge to marry their own good businesses with sustainable climate principles.
It's a greenhouse gas that's over 80 times more potent than CO₂ in the short term, meaning it's hitting the planet faster and yet is often overlooked when it comes to climate solutions. I'm talking here about methane. Methane is the climate threat we can't afford to ignore, but we often do. It only makes up 20% of greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also responsible for about 30% of today's global warming, with emissions coming heavily from sectors like oil and gas, agriculture and waste. So, an overlooked market opportunity that can solve a huge portion of the climate crisis sounds like a major place for innovation. Enter Windfall Bio and Louis Stenmark. Windfall is harnessing the power of methane-eating microbes to capture this potent gas and transform it into organic, nutrient-rich fertiliser. It's an approach that not only cuts emissions, but turns literal waste into value, creating an incredible opportunity for impact. And this approach is timely. In 2021, over 100 countries signed the Global Methane Pledge at COP26. They committed to cut methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Tackling methane isn't just critical for the climate, it's a rising priority worldwide. Windfall's investors recognise this potential, with nearly $40 million in funding from supporters like Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures and Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund. They're pioneering a methane solution that's both environmentally powerful and financially strategic. By turning overlooked waste into a valuable product, Louis and Windfall Bio are transforming a major climate threat into a profitable, sustainable business. I had a great chat with Louis about Windfall Bio's success and how he went from a champion sprinter to a leader in climate tech and made the Forbes 30 under 30 list in this episode. So stay tuned. Louis, welcome to Climatologist.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Exciting.
So you're co-founder and director of marketing at Windfall Bio. The company is growing quickly and I understand you've raised almost $40 million today. So right off the bat, elevator pitch, I'm a potential investor, we're taking a left. What have you got for me?
I would say that we're a methane transformation company, first of all, and transforming the methane into an organic fertilizer or value mainly, like broadly, like just waste to value. And for us, it's like methane is only a wasted, gas if it's not being put to use. And it inherently has energy within it, unlike CO₂. So we don't have to add anything to it. Methane has that value. It's just about extracting it. And the way that we extract it is by using microbes. And we do that for oil and gas, landfill, waste management, agriculture, and then some level of like carbon project industry stuff as well. So yeah.
Wow, good elevator pitch.
I hope so. I felt like I should be better at doing that, but it's always like dependent on who I'm talking to.
Yeah. The pitch shifts on the audience. So let's break that down. You're converting methane, which is a waste product, and you're turning it into something that's useful.
Yeah.
Which is
so there's kind of two plays. The most obvious one that we've spoken the most about is organic fertilizer. So the microbes, once they're eating that methane, which is their primary source of energy for like growth, survival, and all that kind of stuff, the biomass that they kind of create, so more microbes, and then depending on what medium you put them on, whether that be like you can put that on like biochar or you can put it on compost or all that kind of stuff. If you take that biomass, then you effectively have a nitrogen-rich fertilizer, and then the organic certification is something that has to come later, or it's just a straight value play of increasing that or improving profitability by removing methane from the operation supply chain, whatever it may be.
Amazing. So you mentioned organic.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a chemical fertilizer.
No, it's just straight like we would kind of call it like bioavailable nutrients. So nutrients that plants are already familiar with because it comes straight from nature. Like our microbe consortia, the way that we refer to it, methane eating microbes, or MEMS. That is like a selection of the best strains of microbes that are capable of both eating methane as well as nitrogen fixation, and that's what kind of gets you that fertilizer piece in the end. Without that nitrogen fixation, it's kind of like you would still have that biomass, but it's just not packing the punch that plants need to grow better.
Got it. So if we break that down to the process, you mentioned a bioreactor, like where are you getting the methane? Where is it coming from? What's the process that it follows to become this, this useful byproduct?
Yeah, so there's a couple different applications. Like we could have like dilute methane that's just like out in the open, that's not really being captured, and then there's more enclosed methane, captured methane. So the enclosed methane, captured methane is a lot easier for us to work with as a source, because it's already there. All we have to do is just pipe it into a bioreactor of sorts, and that would come from landfill gas capture systems, oil and gas like flaring operations, like you just divert from the flare, and then as well as like dairy barn exhaust if you have a indoor dairy, depending on the climate. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to ask a follow-up with.
Yeah. So dairy. Tell me about the dairy barn. Like, where you're literally pumping methane from a dairy farm.
Yeah. So when the cows are in the barn, they're burping, and the burps are actually more potent than the farts. A little fun fact for everyone out there who's maybe confused otherwise. But the burps are potent, and then they're coming up and then rising up into that exhaust, and then you can kind of pipe from that exhaust into, similar to like an anaerobic digester for those who are like familiar with that usually is done for electrification. We can kind of take that, and then within a bioreactor, which is essentially just like a tank where chemical reactions occur using biology, microbes, they're eating the methane within that, and then you're getting that methane reduction, and then you can take the biomass out of there and then sprinkle it onto the field in an agriculture application. And then as you scale that up to, oil and gas landfill, the more methane you have, the bigger bioreactor you have, the more fertilizer you can create. And then it's effectively like a fertilizer production hub. And then you don't have to rely on those synthetic alternatives, which in themselves produce a massive amount of carbon just to go through that chemical process.
So you guys are reducing methane, which is good, and producing a byproduct that reduces uses of chemicals and other things. Before you became a co-founder of the business, why methane? What was the opportunity you saw?
Well, I was just interested at university, I was interested in transformation kind of technologies. Like I was a really big fan of Air Company and what they were doing with CO₂ to ethanol. They were doing like vodka, perfume, hand sanitizer, with the ultimate goal of kind of creating that exposure to do jet fuel, that they're kind of obviously their main hero product is. And I remember looking at that and going like, oh, it'd be really, really cool to see what other ways that, we can transform something that's already massively prevalent and turn it into something valuable. And then like I was lucky to get introduced to Josh Silverman, our CEO and co-founder. And he's the mastermind behind it. He's been working on methane transformation technology for decades plus, and just has a really extensive background in all sorts of biology, to be honest, microbiology, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it was just like no one was really doing anything about it. And when I sat down with Josh for the first time, I remember him saying, like I was saying before, it has its own inherent value, methane, and no one's looking to do anything with it or has thought about ways. And the methane-eating microbes that we use, like in nature, they're called methanotrophs, and they exist within nature and help keep the balance between methanogens, generating the ones that generate methane, and methanotrophs, they help keep in balance this like equilibrium of, natural processes of methane being released, and then those things consume that. And Josh had kind of noticed that the methanotroph population in the soil was going down, and recognized like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity for us to even just like a reseeding, if you know what I mean, like harnessing those strains, building them back up, and then like reseeding them back into nature. And then it was kind of like, wait, there's an evolution beyond this of we can use this industrially and at greater scale, and then kind of get that win-win-win that we refer to of like benefiting nature, benefiting the bottom line, and then the customers as well down the chain.
So as you're describing the methane producing microbes and the methanotropes?
Methanotropes, like I kind of remember it by saying like a trough, like they eat from a trough.
Like cows, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's like the actual origin, but we'll just ignore that. But yeah. And then the methanogens generating methane. That just
I'm just getting a picture of like Jedi Knights, like the dark side and the light side. Not enough Jedi.
But it's not necessarily an evil one or a good one. Just balance is good. Balance is what we're after. So I kind of imagine the microbes, the methanotropes, as like little Pac-Man things, and then the little things that Pac-Man eat are like the methane molecules.
Man, we could go. Yeah,
there's a lot of
we got analogies forever. This is amazing. Okay, so before we dig into some of your background, let's talk about like methane and its impact as a greenhouse gas. Why methane? Why not CO2? What's the for like?
For sure. Well, methane's, depending on the time scale that you look at it, methane's 86 times more, 80 plus times more potent heating potential than CO2. The fastest way for us to kind of mitigate methane or slow global warming is by the reduction of methane.
In the near term?
Yeah, in the near term.
So let's talk about your background and before we dig into Windfall. So your path to climate tech is anything but conventional. You've gone from a sprinter shooting for the Olympics to a Stanford college student, and then straight to a Forbes 30 under 30 list and co-founding the business we're here to talk about. How do you think that early experience, so the sports experience and the Stanford experience, have set you up for the role you're in now?
I would say like the unpredictability of sport is probably one of the biggest ones, and then coupled with that is you set goals within sport, just kind of shooting for that initially, but then there's that unpredictable stuff that gets in the way, and then that's where you have to be able to pivot and still keep your eye on that goal, but then adjust as you go. And I think that that's been really, really helpful in the startup world. You have ideas of, okay, we're going to get this done by this time, and literally everything might go wrong, everything might go right. You can't really know, and things might go quicker, things might go slower, and being able to adjust on the fly, set those realistic goals, and then be really resourceful and talk to the right people about like the direction to go, or where you need help, like being honest where you need help. As a athlete, especially like in sprinting, there's so many different people that you need to consult to end up making you, as like, if you look at your performance as like a company or a product, you need physio, chiropractor, strength and conditioning, sprint specialist coach, all sorts of stuff, nutrition, dietitian kind of stuff. And you need to just become resourceful as like, hey, I need this now. Like, where do we get this from? And that, I definitely would say that's prepared me for like jumping straight in the deep end with Windfall and just making things happen. As far as the Stanford experience as well, you just meet so many interesting people who kind of inspire you to just execute and do stuff. A lot of people, the reason why I think that they ended up at Stanford was because their resumes pre-Stanford were anything that I thought was interesting, I went and did it and saw what happened. And you are surrounded by that enough and kind of go, oh, well, maybe I did that too. I should keep doing that, because there's other people who do that, and people just go like, oh, okay, let's support that person because they're just a doer and they get stuff done. So yeah, being surrounded by that at Stanford was massive. And then also just the exposure to the research, the professors, the projects that people are working on that you go, oh, this obviously matters. Like, and the kind of trajectory that some of the classes and stuff at Stanford was going in. I remember in my last year, they were just about to open up the new sustainability school, and there was classes popping up left, right, and center. And I was like, felt like I got in just before, like just at the right time, and that really set me up for eventually meeting Josh and just like having a little bit more of exposure in a smaller industry that maybe not everyone was trying to work in. It was obviously like part of a broader narrative of, hey, we all know about climate, but what is climate tech? What is, there's this buzzwordy kind of thing. And especially being in Silicon Valley, like it feels like such a bubble. There's so many people investing in that already there, but around the world, like I'd come back on holidays back to Australia and friends would be like, oh man, I'm hearing about this, climate tech, climate investing. What do you reckon? Is it and I'm going like, based on where I'm sitting, it's the only thing that people were worried about and cared about and all that kind of stuff. So I think that both those experiences was super helpful, just kind of learning to be in a little bit of chaos, but find the direction that makes the most sense and just like follow it and have that conviction. So yeah.
So it's so broad based, but the bias to execution seems to be a big theme. So question on execution, one of the things that we talked about, so we caught up before this podcast, we talked about failure and the positive attitude to failure at Stanford, and some of the challenges that you experienced in your running career with injury and so on. How do those things play in?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one when you compare the company or like the career progression path with track and field. I would say when you get injured, the more you get injured in track and field, people are probably going, oh yeah, he's pretty injury prone that way. But in like at least Palo Alto, Stanford kind of area, if you kind of had failed and you kept getting back up and giving it a go, and your ideas, were pretty good to start off with, people more looked at it as this thing of like, oh, you're giving it a crack, you've learned something really valuable from that, you've probably raised some money, and then you went and did some stuff with it, and you learn the greatest lessons by jumping in the deep end and kind of stepping into that arena and feeling the heat of battle, as much as that's a bit of an exaggeration. But by doing that, and then even if you fail, people go, oh, well, you've done the founder thing before, potentially the paths that you went down that were wrong, and there was some good ones that you did right, especially if you stay in something that you did before, or you are one of the better suited individuals. Like that's kind of how investors look. They go, are you one of the best people in the world to solve this problem? And if you are, like, keep stepping up to the plate and giving it a go, because eventually, you would think you just keep serving them up. You get enough shots up, one of them's going to go in. With kind of track and field, I would say the way that I look at it, and maybe other people won't, is the more avenues I cut off of like, hey, I've tried this strength and conditioning approach, it didn't work. I've tried this one. Every one that I cut off means ideally the closer I am to that right one that works for me. And at the very least, I'll have learned an absolutely massive amount of stuff about my own body, about what I think I'm capable of, what I think I'm not, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a matter of like, hey, try enough times and you're going to get a lot of data, and without trying you just can't get any information, you can't get knowledge to make better decisions as you move forward. So there's like as well, there's a bit of a different appetite, at least historically there was, of West Coast, you failed, people like get up, give it another go. East Coast maybe a little bit less, and then maybe that's why we have the Silicon Valley forming in the way that it did, out of people in garages just like going for it and trying to make products and failing and testing them on people and all this kind of stuff. And then maybe in the East Coast it was like, oh, you failed, just give up, go get a conventional job, you'll be right. I don't know if from what I've heard, there was historically different attitudes, but I don't know how it's evolving now. I think everyone's probably got a little bit of a tech startup hub place going and people have more of an appetite, but hopefully it keeps going because it's good for innovation, I think.
It is. It's an amazing place. It's interesting that you talk about it in this entrepreneurial sense, because we get a lot of noise about, Austin or New York, other areas exploding around the startup scene. But it sounds like your feeling was very different. It still has that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you come to Stanford as a campus, I even remember visiting and going, yeah, this is like pretty, like, you're walking around, it's like the Hewlett Packard like buildings, and like literally everything is named after someone. And there feels like this really entrepreneurial spirit. But then even now, I think the landscape's doubled down, tripled down. You go there and almost everyone seems to have an idea for some startup. They might want to exit, they might want to do this, and people are sitting at cafes talking about that stuff. I don't know if that was just the people that I was maybe around, but it definitely seems like that's the way. Like, people don't really necessarily want to work for someone else, or they know that that's going to be the best way for them to set themselves up to do whatever they want after. And it's like interesting because I sometimes think it's like people haven't thought about what they would do if they do exit after that. I go, what do you think that you're going to do? You're just going to ride off into the sunset. It's like the dog chasing cars, doesn't know what it's going to do when it gets it. But hey, it's good way to spend the time.
Entrepreneurs as dogs chasing cars. I feel that's a very accurate description.
Hopefully we don't get people banging on the door after this one.
That's it. So speaking of superpowers, it sounds like one of your thinking about superpowers, one of your superpowers is clearly resilience. We talked about the LinkedIn game and how you got into what is a very famous course, the Climate Venture Capital course at Stanford. Can you tell us about the LinkedIn game and how you managed to get into the course?
Yeah, well, my LinkedIn approach, I don't know if it's necessarily groundbreaking. I think that it was probably what was intended for. But I remember taking this other class at Stanford called Networks, which is all about literally network effect and network theory. And the thing that stood out the most to me was like 80% of people get jobs from not someone that they know, but someone that person knows. And I was like, well, if you just increase the number of people that you know and know well and have honestly like a decent relationship or can talk with them, then you increase your second degree connections massively, and then that increases your job potential of getting a job perhaps. So my kind of thought, without actually breaking it down that heavily, was, okay, I'll just connect with people that I think are doing something interesting and see if they're willing to chat. So I kind of went from there, and then fast forward into my final year at Stanford, wanted to get more involved in climate related stuff, and Stanford Climate Ventures was this pretty cool, like the underground, I guess you could call it, class that was working on taking climate tech ideas in all different realms, like electric vehicles, like hardware, like solar panel stuff, wind, tide energy, all kind of different stuff, and CO₂ conversion as well, and then making them into like a commercially viable product, and the steps of like idea, pitching, gaining funding. And it was more around that initial like early, pre-seed, seed kind of stage. And I needed to get into that class, and I effectively needed to like join a team, and I was just sticking around kind of like just this annoying dude that wasn't a part of a team yet. And the TA, like the teaching assistants, were like, you actually have to leave, you can't stay in this class if you don't have a team. So I went around and pitched to different teams being like, hey, can I jump in here? And they were like, we don't really need you, like you don't really have any technical skill that would be useful at this time. And I was like, yeah, look, you're not wrong. And then went to the one that I was really, really interested in. They were doing like a CO₂ to different like chemical feedstocks. And we were looking at carbon dioxide to acetate for like glasses frames or different ingredients in paint or like shoe materials, all that kind of stuff. And I pretty much just said like, look, I can't offer, technical expertise on the product or anything like that, but I can get you to whoever you want to talk to, because a massive part of the class was doing like 80 customer interviews at least over the 10 weeks of really in-depth interviews to just problem solve and like need find effectively, and see if there was like a market for the product. So I pretty much was like, I can get you to this person tomorrow, or get a meeting with you with this person tomorrow. And then they were like, they kind of huddled, and they were like, okay, well, if you can do that, like you can join our team. Anyway, like literally that afternoon, I like messaged one of the dudes that I knew in CO₂ conversion stuff, and was like, hey, can you meet? We're doing this project, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, no worries, done. And then I was like, we did it. The LinkedIn hustle worked, but yeah, it's cool. I've actually met so many cool people as well through it. And then through kind of connecting other people. Someone will go, oh, hey man, this is a mate of mine who wants to get into climate. And so many people are wanting to make that transition now and literally have no idea where to start. And I had absolutely no idea when I was joining Stanford Climate Ventures that would eventuate. And I'd kind of understand the landscape, but it's more just the techniques that I was using is how you would build up that expertise a little bit better, rather than being like, this is the step to get into this part. It's just like a genuine level of curiosity and follow and keep asking questions of like, oh, hey, I really like food waste, climate tech related solutions. Oh, I can connect you with this person, and then just follow that rabbit hole. Okay. And I think that you get rewarded for genuine curiosity because people go like, there's passion behind that, so let's keep fueling that because it's got positive energy within it. I don't know how many people are curiously like negative energy. Like I don't know, I haven't met too many people like that. So
it's amazing how supportive the business community and climate is to people and to meeting, opening doors. So that's that 100%. If you're transitioning,
yeah, that's definitely something as well that I've been really happy to see like come into Australia as well. I think typically before climate related stuff, people were less maybe willing to network. Just like if you plucked a random person off the street, it's like a very US based thing of like, oh, how can I help? You know, that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing, but no like nefariousness around it. It was just very, hey, let's just see what happens. I'm sure we'll cross paths one day, and I'm glad to see that that's happening more in Australia, but would definitely encourage people to adopt that and go, you honestly never know who will end up helping you. Like we spoke about earlier with the Stanford Climate, one of the people who helped me out there ended up, needing a recommendation from me from a investor. And it's just like, you honestly absolutely never know. So just help everyone, and it's like makes everyone happier, the world a better place without it being too cheesy.
I love it. So on this point of, turning points, you obviously not gone in a straight line. What's a really pivotal decision or inflection point that you can speak to? Maybe a choice that seemed small at the time, that had a really outsized impact on your path.
Obviously, like I knew that I wanted to go to college really early on, and then had to decide between which college I wanted to go to, which is obviously not a small decision. But I was looking at between Stanford, Princeton, and Harvard, and Stanford had actually entered the equation really, really late. It was like I was about to get on the plane and got an email being like, you should come tack this visit on the end. But within that, deciding that I wanted to prioritize academics over athletics has been the most ultimate choice that I've ever made. And not necessarily like just putting athletics like in the trash can, by going like, the piece of advice that helped me the most was, if you were to choose a college and the first day you walked on campus and broke your leg, did whatever, a career-ending injury, would you be happy to be there? And that completely reframed what I was thinking. Like I knew that I wanted to do something academically, but it was kind of like, is everything else going to be there in my life at that place? Is that also going to be thriving? And then that kind of took off the table any sprinting, like just sprint school kind of option. And then it narrowed it down, which was super, super helpful. So then, yeah, obviously choosing Stanford in the end just felt like the best place with a lot of balance for me. I'm trying to think of other decisions, just like random ones of just going, there's a lot of pressure at Stanford to do certain degrees. So a lot of people do computer science because like you're massively employable after, like you could leave and get like 150K, 200K plus straight out. And you're just like, I don't even know what to do with that. But even within that, there's still like other degrees that are maybe like sound a little bit more impressive or are harder. I'm on the grind, I'm doing this and stuff. And kind of eventually shutting that out and going, I'm going to do the degree that I really, really want to do because the classes actually look interesting and I can create my own adventure with it. That has eventually led me to where I am now. I was just like, this is going to mean I'm going to have so much more time to chat with friends, and the people at Stanford are just amazing. So it's literally where you'd want to put most of your time. And then also like, I could just do so many different random things. Like you're saying, my path was just all over the place. Like I literally did introductory piano, which I'm still pretty bad at. Like a neuroscience, how the brain works class, this class called Rhetoric of Gaming, which is like writing big essays or like kind of like research proposals on how to use gaming to make the world a better place. Just like so many random things that skills from all those things have ended up like putting me in a good position of where I am in currently at Windfall, like doing the marketing stuff. Taught me so much about the power of storytelling and creating emotional connection or relating it back to someone, and just all these different little things. So yeah, a lot of different small choices that I look back on, and now sitting here, and then especially with like the Forbes thing, looking back and going like, how did this even, you know, happen? Like my first year of Stanford, I was chatting to someone who had been part of Forbes 30 under 30, and I was just like, how does one even go about doing that? That's like so far off my radar and not something that I would have ever really like even thought of. And then you just make little decisions based on passions or curiosity, like I was saying, and then you end up at these places and you kind of like look around and go like, don't know if I should be here, but like it looks cool from here. Like I don't mind it. So yeah.
So was Forbes a goal?
It was, but I wouldn't say it was like ever. It didn't feel like a realistic thing at all. It was kind of like me and my mate were chatting one day, one of my best mates from Stanford, who's also ended up getting Forbes, but we were sitting there going, oh, have you ever like thought about that? Just like as just a joke, just yarning about whatever. And then we were like, oh, you know, if we ever do anything that's like worth doing, we should nominate each other. But I don't think either of us did. But yeah, and then I just kind of woke up one morning and one of my mates messaged me and it was like, mate, you're an absolute idiot. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, he's like, check like, you know, LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And I saw it and I was like, nah, this is ridiculous. Like, it's crazy. So definitely grateful more so to the Windfall team and everyone that's like got us to where we were from that, because definitely not just me. I just happen to be the only under 30 person that was working in the founding team. So
very, very humble. Congratulations, mate. It's insane. Let's pivot away from your insane background and talk about Windfall a bit more. So we talked about agriculture, so the sustainable fertiliser solution, but let's dig into waste management and oil and gas. Like why those markets? Why did you pick them? Why do they make sense? And how have you found the customers there?
First of all, like we didn't necessarily choose them. So that's like something, I don't know if everyone has that luxury to the point where we got really good media coverage, first of all, from like Forbes, and like our current list of media coverage is like Forbes, CNBC, CBS, all that kind of stuff. And that, it was really good. Like customers were obviously connecting the dots. They were literally going, methane, if there's methane as a source, and we kind of put this broadly of if there's methane as a source, we can capture it and turn it into something valuable for you, or at the very least, just remove it and transform it. And then we kind of had people come out of the woodwork going like, hey, well, if you can do this for agriculture, dairy, can you do this for landfill? Can you do this for this really niche like waste management problem, or can you do this for like pig farming? Or so we had a lot of people coming out in that way and going, it might have been something like, hey, we have a local like a local town nearby our landfill, and we'd like to start doing more for that landfill and reducing the emissions for that community there. And so we were kind of like, yeah, well, we should look into, you know, like our initial thought was like, yeah, we can do that. We've thought about different ways that we could apply this, but wasn't sure if the appetite was there, or the willingness to spend money on projects like that was there. And that definitely comes down to different geographies and regulations. So like the value that one places on removing methane is pretty correlated to how much they might have to pay tax-wise, because other than that, there's no real incentive. You know, there's opportunities in for example, like Brazil to do methane landfill reduction, and there's like a carbon project kind of more willingness to do that there than in the US. They don't have any regulations on landfill or removing, like they have regulations, but they're not spurring people to make change. Yeah, so that's not necessarily the area until, all these like carbon mapper and all these satellites are going to start coming through and just exposing a lot of different sources of methane, particularly these massive landfills that are thought to be even massively underestimated. And then obviously just looking at the appetite of oil and gas kind of companies that have a massive amount of methane and don't really have a way to create value from that. The only other way is like kind of just flaring it, and that's not benefiting anyone. It'd be a lot better to just capture that and then turn it into a fertiliser, and then be able to, we effectively could buy that back from them and then pass that on to a fertiliser distributor, or depending on the location of those oil and gas operations, you can literally just transport it straight to nearby farms. So there is that win-win, and it's kind of good to be able to create some value that would have a little bit of a positive ripple effect, given that oil and gas is not really doing that usually.
We all need to be rehabilitated. Mm-hmm. No one's a bad guy. Yeah, balance to the force again, that whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's like good that's like there is this willingness by certain oil and gas companies to kind of step forward and go, okay, we can do something about this. So
let's talk about that, like oil and gas. Like, what do they actually like to work with? I've had some really good experiences talking to oil and gas execs.
I think, like, first of all, it's really, really cool because the people that we've been working with at least have a massive amount of engineering knowledge. So their willingness to kind of come up with solutions and put money behind it is really, really cool. But it's definitely like a thing of we need results. But I think we've found that with almost every industry. Everyone wants results. Anyone that's putting money into something, you need a return on it, and no one's just sitting there going, here's some charity dollars, like, let's see what you can produce. I think people are a little bit over that with certain climate-based projects. It's like, oh, it looks really cool, it sounds cool and it's sexy, but it doesn't work. So there is just like across the board, there's not, I wouldn't say it's pressure, but it's like, hey, let's make sure this thing works and let's do it now because we're effectively running out of time.
That's a great imperative. In that context then, so lots of publicity, you raise 40 mil. Practically, what stage is the business at? Like, are you guys piloting with these?
Yeah. So we're like, I would say pre-commercial pilots and testing the in-field performance of our methane-eating microbes across different applications. So like I said, that we had the closed like kind of bioreactor application, and then we also have application for landfill-based stuff where it's like a little bit more, we're not necessarily able to capture it, but like a landfill. Landfills have the gas capture systems, but even if they have that, there's an opportunity for those kind of the infrastructure of the landfill to leak out methane, and there's no real way to currently stop that unless you get someone who can walk around and just pat down all of these cracks or whatever. But even still, that doesn't work because you get all of the different environmental conditions changing the soil. When it dries out, then you get it dries out, it gets cracks. When it rains, it shifts and all that kind of stuff. So for us, it's kind of this like ability to, like I was talking about before, reseed the landfill and put those methanotropes back into the soil of the landfill to act as like this filter, like a cover effectively that's stopping those emissions getting out. And then it's and that's like a pure methane reduction removal play there, rather than it's hard to then go and create value. We're not necessarily creating a fertilizer from that application, but at the moment landfills want to reduce their methane, and in Australia particularly there is regulation coming down the pipe of them having to go start being proactive. People are making sustainability pledges of reducing their emissions by X amount by 2030, and there's not a lot being done or a lot of options for companies that that produce a lot of methane. There's just like literally not much that they can do out there, and a lot of the focus is going towards agriculture. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance around all of those problems and the best ways to solve them, but good minds are working on it, but we just need more people doing more executing stuff.
getting shit done bit. And how are the results? So are you seeing out in the field what you were seeing in the lab?
Yes, which is really, really exciting. We can't talk publicly about it at this stage, but hopefully we can release some stuff publicly with some of our partners that are super, super exciting. But yeah, really, really, I wouldn't even say surprised. Like what we saw in the lab, it's just really nice to know that you can take that solution, put it into the field, and it will perform the same way in the lab. Obviously, you'll have circumstances where just the environment gets in the way of certain things. But we didn't really find that, like in the applications that we put down, like a bioreactor, we've been having really positive results so far. So,
wow,
exciting.
It is very exciting. So it sounds like you're spoiled for choice, right? You've had some great publicity, well engineered. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. So you've had the publicity, you've had your pick of customers. We've talked about the US market being challenging. What about the EU? What about Australia? How do you pick the geographies that you expand into or that you work in?
Yeah, so seems like it might be a tangent, but I was living in Florida for a bit, and then for track and field related stuff. Then came back to Australia, and as I came back to Australia for a little bit of time working remotely and stuff like that, we actually had waste management company in Australia reach out to us and wanting to work with us. So like that was awesome for us to have people come and find us on LinkedIn and go, we searched methane transformation technology and you guys came up. That was super exciting for us. So that was like one of those things where, okay, I just happened to be Australian and we could do that and make that happen, and I could go and fly and visit sites and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of one choice, but then there's also, you just have like an overwhelming amount of demand from certain regions that go, we have this problem, can you fix it? And like a couple of those are Brazil, Japan has been a really interesting one. Some really interesting stuff out of Africa. They have this lake called Lake Kivu in Rwanda that is effectively like an exploding lake. And because it produces so much methane, if there's stuff not done, like if they don't remove that methane, it's catastrophic, like killing thousands and thousands of people if that is to explode and release that gas. So it's like a lot of super interesting stuff, and it's kind of like, even though you say that we're spoiled for choice, it's like we also then have to go, okay, what are the best customers for us? And for us, it's this calculation of where can we make the most impact and benefit for both sides. We want to, given our current stage, we need to develop the product with someone who's patient enough to go, okay, this and this, but also have the willingness to pay that as well, and have the ability to go, okay, this is going to take this much equipment and this amount of time and the material that we have to produce to mitigate a certain amount of methane. So yeah, choosing the customers is really a difficult thing as well, because when you have that much demand, you go, I wish we could just hire 100 more people and then just get it going. But if everyone could produce as many microbes as necessary, everyone, like, we'd all be doing it. It's definitely hats off to our R&D team and the engineering team that go, okay, we have a thing that works in the lab, the microbe's great, they work, we do the tests, and then we go and then we have to actually put that into real world applications, and their brains coming together to allow that to happen, and then the whole team like intermingling within that is awesome. But it's, we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, and within that there's unknowns all throughout it. So
which it sounds like is an environment that you thrive in. So.
trying to learn how to thrive in that. But yeah, like I said, the team and the appetite to also thrive within that and go, yeah, we can do that or we can solve that. Like so many of the people in our team have such insane amount of background knowledge or deep expertise in their field that they can go, yeah, like on the fly can go, yeah. That's
how so 40 mil raise. How's the team changed since you kind of
there was like there's four of us at the start, but yeah, we just kept growing and growing, and now we're at about 40 people and started working on it a little bit after July 2022.
Wow, that's fast growth.
And we launched publicly in March 2023. So now we're at 40 people. We got, CFO, HR, hiring managers.
Do you focus on, when you're choosing partners to work with on a project, do you focus on the CO₂ impact or the revenue, or both?
I would say both.
Shouldn't have given you that one.
Both is good. At the current stage, the revenue is probably more important for us to grow as a company and keep doing what we're doing, because we get this really nice bang for buck of, okay, this is a really big problem in terms of methane. We're testing it on a smaller scale to, verify the capability of our microbes. And then if we can do that at a smaller scale and be earning revenue, it's kind of external pointers into our company going like, these guys are doing something that's worth that. And if you reach revenue as a early stage startup, other investors are going to be involved. There's hype around that. Other people in the space start going, methane technologies are something that can be profitable and benefit both sides, our company and the partner. So yeah, I would say the revenue is really important, obviously. Otherwise, like some may argue, why do you have a business anyway? But the revenue is important because of the potential impact that we'll get to eventually. Like by having that belief from our partners, we scale up, commercial scale, and then go global. The impact is massive in terms of fertiliser production, like weight of fertiliser production produced, and then also methane reduction. So by tons is huge.
On that, so theoretically, you guys have thought about the volumes of fertilizer you can produce in the context. Like what sort of numbers are we talking?
I will hold off on saying that because I'm not the numbers guy, and I don't want to throw out some crazy number and then for us to just massively even surpass that. But yeah, I'll hold off on that. But it's stuff that we hope to be able to release in the next little bit of projections and stuff like that.
That's a very well stage managed response.
Marketing guy, brand management.
Okay, so let's in that vein, let's talk about innovation in the broader food system. So you guys are trying to drive circularity. In the discussions that you've had with farmers, is this something that farmers are thinking about? Are they trying to shift the way that they do business?
Yeah, I think like there's this massive, maybe like, I don't know if I'd call it stigma, but there's this thought that farmers don't care about sustainability because like of the way that everyone goes, oh, well, if they're a cattle farmer, they obviously don't care because the cows are producing this and this and this. And you just go, if there's anyone that cares about sustainability and longevity, it's someone who makes their living or has potentially their whole families, like generation after generation, has made their living off of land. And to be able to have a sustainable business, and sustainable in the terms of profitability equals sustainability, because if you don't make money, you're gone and then your impact's done. They are the most in tune with, okay, what's the soil health looking like? How is that going to impact yield? All that kind of stuff. And then also like even just like water quality, what stuff they're putting on crops and making sure that that's not just destroying it for years to come. It's just that they don't usually have tools or options that are viable to balance this. Oh, let's look after the environment right now in favor of like, okay, well, we actually need to make some money right now instead of that. So that's like a really difficult nuance that, if you haven't spoken to farmers or worked with them, and I still have a lot more to learn. I'm not going to say that I'm the master of it, but there needs to be this like really deep appreciation of how difficult it is to produce food for people. And we sometimes might just look at them as like, you're a farmer as a part of like this massive network of farmers. But if you think about it, it's like you're a family that's just producing food for all of us with all of these different elements like that are coming at you. There's environmental based stuff of like, what's the climate doing? How's that going to affect yield? How's that going to affect just all of the things that ultimately affect the bottom line for them? And then it's like you also have you're negotiating with a grocery supplier or something like that. There's just so much stuff that we can't fathom because we might be sitting in an office and we work on a single account where that person works on a farm and has thousands of animals to manage, kids, a wife, all this stuff. It's like, how can we expect that and then go, but do more for sustainability? It's like we need to be the ones that go, this is a sustainable option for you to implement, and we can guarantee to you that it works, or we've tested it, or if they have the luxury, allow us to test it on your farm, which also creates disruption. So we're massively grateful to the farms that have allowed us to pilot our technology with them, because it's ultimately a disruption if it works or not, you know what I mean? Because at that small scale, yeah. So I don't know if that full answers the question, but
no, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's a great counter to a typical view.
Yeah, providing options is just like a massive thing, and then also just not throwing down blanket statements of do this to solve the climate, or eat this thing and everything will be solved. That's not necessarily that. If you think about it from like a more of a nuanced perspective, if we just stop completely eating meat here, or we all say no, we're going to boycott cattle farms here, the production of meat goes offshore, and then potentially where regulations are not as strict, you have more cattle being produced, and then like more meat, and then you have greater emissions. So it's like you really got to think through a lot of this stuff when you're making these decisions around certain things. And like the thing that I always come back to is like, let's just provide sustainable options for farmers, for everyone. Honestly, like it's really hard to change people's behavior. It's better to provide them with a better option and make that the logical, like, hey, let's do that. That works better, and make that built into it sustainability. And that's like the focus for Windfall has been on improving profitability, because everyone loves that. And if sustainability is the bonus, the benefit, awesome. That's what we want,
Brilliant. Let's talk about other partnerships, so specifically investor partnerships. What does your collaboration look like with some of the investors that have come into onto the share register?
So we have the kind of leads for our investment rounds. We've raised 37 million so far. We had 9 million for a seed round, and then 28 for the Series A. And within that, we had Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is Bill Gates. Yeah, Bill Gates. Thanks, Bill.
Cheers, Bill.
And then Prelude Ventures, which is like a family-owned, like family office. And then Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund, and then Mayfield Ventures in San Francisco, who've been, honestly, all of them have been really, really awesome and have provided this like access to their networks, especially like if we're wanting to work with certain suppliers of theirs or people that they, might have some foot in the door. They've been super helpful with, hey, this technology is looking really promising. We believe in it. And their word is really strong. Like there's some big names on there, and they've proven themselves as great investors. And so the weight of their word is like, it carries a lot of weight, and that enables us to, pull favors, I guess, of like, hey, give this a go, pilot this. And then also just like enabling us to get in front of good media, like that we've said. Josh got to speak at the Breakthrough Energy Ventures like summit in London and had, you know, a little bit in the spotlight where he could chat about Windfall, and not even necessarily that, just like the problems that we're trying to solve, because it's better for us to just highlight problems rather than just plug ourselves all the time. It's like, oh yeah, check out Windfall. It's like, great. But let's start attracting more attention and get this like groundswell of stuff. And yeah, all of our investors within that have been massively helpful because they genuinely care. And even really early on with Mayfield in particular, they had so much. One of Arvind Gupta is on the board, and he had so much passion for what he wanted it to look like and all that kind of stuff. And that's, you can't ask for much more than that. You know, having someone that invested, literally, is awesome. And like having that back and forth and just being a friendly dude. So,
5 to 10 years ahead, what does Windfall look like?
I would assume that will be at commercial scale by then. It's you can never tell with climate tech and the way that things go. And then also just, I would love to see us deployed globally, and in particularly like solution or applications that are both in developed and developing countries. Like I think the way that this solution was engineered was, okay, a lot of the stuff that we talk about in terms of climate is like, okay, yeah, in developed nations, we have the luxury to choose this or this or this, what we want to eat, where we want to live, how we want to behave. In developing nations, it's literally just a matter of survival. You're not thinking about anything to do with sustainability when you're looking for your next meal. So we're trying to make sure like that the solution just works, and then being able to get it to a point where it can go anywhere in the world and be like on a single cow farm where they, you know, can put the microbes on the manure and have some kind of manure management system themselves, and it enriches the manure that they have, and then they can turn that into compost. That would be awesome. Like that would be the dream. It's kind of why you start doing it in the first place. It's like, you know, we probably should have just started like a B2B SaaS company if we just wanted to make a lot of money.
Mate, take it to the heart. That was me. That was me.
I got respect for it.
Yeah.
Productivity. You probably helped save me multiple hours with productivity. So
let's pivot to some advice. You've been in the trenches building a climate company from the ground up, and you've clearly been on a wild growth curve. What's the most valuable lessons you've learned in the last couple of years that you wish you'd known on day one?
I feel like everyone says this one, but you actually just feel like you don't really know what you're doing. And I would say just go in the direction that you think that is the right way. You don't have to be 100% certain on if that is, this is how someone else in my position should do this. You know what I mean? Like, being like, oh, what is a director of marketing? What should that look like? Figure out what the goal of your company is, and then think about logically strip it back and go, we should do this. Like we should get our solution in front of this person. And just break it down very, very simply. I think you can get really caught up in let's produce this marketing deck or this and this, and doing a lot of internal work where it's just get stuff done, get your word out there. That's really, really important. And just not being too daunted by the imposter thing. It's just such a massive thing, but you can't beat action. I think going out and just doing stuff, we were kind of an example from our own kind of learning was we were kind of going, oh, we need a way to keep our customers updated, the ones that are not necessarily at the right stage right now for us to work with them. And I was like, well, let's just do a newsletter. I haven't done that before, but we'll just condense all our updates and just do it. And from doing that, you just learn oh, that's what people want to hear about. That's not what people really care about. And providing all this value in different ways, eventually people go, oh, cool. And you learn way more from doing things than you do from sitting there and going, well, should we do this? Should we not? And asking for help is massive. That's one of my big ones. If you really don't know something, find someone within your company or a outside mentor that can go, yeah, maybe I wouldn't do that. Maybe I would do this, like improve these skills, that kind of stuff. Like having someone who can provide you honest feedback and guidance with no agenda is massively, massively helpful.
Many aspiring entrepreneurs get stuck waiting for a perfect, fully formed idea. You've turned that on your head and partnered with someone that has. What's that like? What's that been like?
My initial reaction is like, it's really cool, but then there's also some level of, it's really nice when the thing exists in your brain, because when you're making the decisions, it feels obvious. Like I've done that in the past with other things where you go like, yeah, we should do this. And there's no like, is that in line with your vision? You know, like what you thought about it. But I think like after a while, when you start working and like spending so much time working on something and bringing that thing to life, you eventually go, oh no, this is like, I'm so in this. I'm like a part of the crew now, and you kind of can start making those decisions and going like, this is my child, not my child. I don't want to even liken it to that because it's not like that, but it's this idea that you are passionate about and curious about. And when you can adopt that and then go, I guess it's probably like an actor being like, this is the character that I work with or that I want to be, and I just know now what they would do because I'm so in that. That's kind of where I'm at now, and I like that idea. Like if it's something that is attractive to you, I don't think there should be any shame in, you know, it not being your original idea. I guess sometimes you go, oh well, I didn't technically come up with everything, but how many people have done that? You know, how many, like you would hear about some founder that's killed it, but they had so many people, you know, around them that would like jumped on board and went, that's a great idea, I would love to get involved. And that was kind of my trajectory. And I think it's a really good way to also get experience. You know, it might take a while and to figure out the perfect idea or find the right timing. And if you have someone who has more experience in a certain area, and you can like supplement that or complement that with whatever your skills may be, that's awesome.
Great point to move to wrap up. What opportunity do you think is being left on the table in climate?
I think like something that I think is a really noble cause is food waste. I think like, or just like resource waste in general. I think we have enough materials on the earth to make sure everyone gets what they need. It's just like thinking creatively of like, how do we get that to the right person? How do we... Yeah, and it's not necessarily like blatantly climate obvious. It's like, okay, what infrastructure can we put in that might change a certain way that we do stuff? Like if we had a pipeline giving water to a certain region that has a lot of it, would that change, you know, like fertility of land? Or, you know, I'm not a soil expert by any means, or, you know, agriculture expert, but I think that there's thinking about how we can get stuff for everyone, given how much that we already have, and then thinking about our own consumption habits or how we could change people's consumption habits, or not even change them, but like I was saying, create options that are the best and optimum and make it a no-brainer for people to act sustainably because it's better.
Finally, any advice for anyone else thinking of taking the leap to start a business in climate?
Talk to heaps of people before you do it. Like define maybe the areas that you're really interested in. There's a lot of areas within climate. You know, you could literally go into like electric vehicle stuff. You could go into like battery and material science stuff, or we could go complete agriculture. There's just so many areas that we need to address. And there's like that famous thing of like, well, every company is a climate company now. Think about an area where you think that you have a particular expertise in, or like there's some level of like magnetic pull for you towards that. Think about the reason why you might be the best person to start that company or business, and then start speaking to people in that area that are not necessarily going to be the people that you sell to, but the people that are affected most by that problem. Because then you'll have this really broad understanding of, down at this very bottom level of, this person experiences this due to this, all the way up to the sustainability manager for a big corporation or the head of sustainability. You understand all the perspectives within that and what those problems actually mean to those people and what solving them would emotionally like solve for them. You know, it might be like if you solve that issue, that person gets promoted and that's why they care about it. There's so many different levers and motivations to pull on or like reference when you're thinking about a product. And then also you just need to know the technical ins and outs and like what the actual problem is. So talking to as many people as you can that are relevant in that space. Another part of me just goes, hey, even if you're not one of the best people at solving this thing, just give it a crack, because if you are genuinely passionate about it, and by genuinely I mean like a couple knocks is not going to derail you. Like you're going to get punched and pushed over and kicked down and just pretty much on the ground most of the time probably. And if you can keep going, keep doing it, because like you might not be the best person right now to solve it, but you could in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years if you have the patience. Not everyone does. And then maybe a nice little other piece of nuance is like not everyone has to start their own company and be an entrepreneur. Like something that maybe is not talked about when Gary Vee's like shouting and all this kind of stuff is like when you are the one who starts the company, you're also the one in charge of paying bills, like salaries, hiring, firing. Like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of weight that goes to that. A lot of expectations, and you might not necessarily even be doing the thing that when you start it, you think you'll be doing something, and you'll be doing something completely different by the time it grows and you have all these employees. And, you know, sometimes it's nice to work for someone else and not have that weight on your shoulders and be able to go, I'm going to take a vacation, I'm going to do this, you know, like not everyone has to do that. That's something that should be said more, I think. There's like a real glorification of be a founder, put all your money into something and potentially lose it all, and anyone that is around you or you're responsible for is also going to have a bad time. So a little bit of balance, a little bit of nuance in the conversation.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Louis, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Pleasure.
Once again, if you like listening today, then please subscribe to The Climatalist wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a follow on Instagram where we're just Climatalist. I'm Anton. Thanks for listening.